The wind carried dust across the tiny frontier square as the townspeople gathered, breathless with fear and righteousness. At the center of it all stood a woman tied to a rough-hewn post, wrists bound so tightly the rope cut into her skin. Her dress hung torn, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes, steady, cold, unbroken, held not fear, only disappointment. Her name was Evelyn Mercer, the healer of Elkhorn Crossing. For 3 long years she had mended the sick, delivered babies, and saved more lives than anyone in this town dared count out loud. Yet now these same people surrounded her with stones in their hands and hatred in their throats. Mayor Roland Pike stood on a crate, waving a wrinkled sheet of paper like a war banner. "Evelyn Mercer," he declared, voice cracking with self-importance, "you are hereby charged with bringing death upon our town through wicked arts, conjuring harm, and practicing unholy craft." Evelyn's shoulders ached from the ropes, but she didn't flinch. 3 deaths, 3 tragedies. Old Marcus, whose heart had been failing for months. Lucy Ann's newborn, taken by the cruel odds of frontier birth. And drunk Billy Shore, who stumbled into the well after too many bottles. All natural deaths. But grief makes fools, and fear makes mobs. And a woman who lived alone with herbs, salves, and books made the perfect target. A broken cry rose from the crowd. "Burn the witch! Hang her!" A stone struck her shoulder, thrown by little Calvin Brooks. She had once set that boy's leg with her own hands. His betrayal stung more than the blow. Mayor Pike lifted his hand for silence. "Preacher Holt has offered the method. Hanging. To be carried out now." The noose swung in the afternoon light like a serpent waiting to tighten. Evelyn closed her eyes. This was how her grandmother had died, tied to a post for knowing too much. But before the rope touched her skin, thunder broke across the square. Hoofbeats. A lone rider. Dust spiraled behind a black horse charging straight into the crowd. People leapt aside as the animal reared, and the rider swung down with the quiet efficiency of a man who had done far more dangerous things in far darker places. He wore a charcoal coat dusty from long travel. His hat shadowed most of his face. 2 revolvers hung at his hips, low, familiar, deadly. "What are we celebrating?" he asked, voice steady as still water. Mayor Pike puffed himself taller. "This is none of your affair, traveler. We are exercising justice." The stranger's eyes moved across the crowd, the post, the noose, and at last to Evelyn's face. She didn't beg, didn't cry, just looked back with the exhausted calm of someone already preparing for the end. "Justice," the stranger repeated softly. "Funny word." Mrs. Brooks shoved forward, pointing at Evelyn. "She killed our people with her devil herbs." "Herbs," he echoed. "So she's a healer. She's a curse." Tommy Briggs yelled. "She made our livestock sick." The stranger took one slow step toward Evelyn, the crowd parting instinctively. Something about him unsettled even the boldest men. He studied her face, her steady breathing, her raw wrists. Then he turned to the townsfolk. "You're about to kill an innocent woman." Mayor Pike's cheeks flushed red. "You dare interfere?" "I do," the man said simply, "because I've watched mobs kill people before, and they were usually wrong." 6 armed ranch hands stepped forward, hands twitching above holsters. The stranger's posture didn't change, but the air around him did, tightening, sharpening, like a blade being drawn without a sound. One wrong twitch, and he would drop half the men before they cleared leather. "Stranger," Pike warned, "there's 7 guns aimed your way." 8, he corrected softly. "You're forgetting mine." Evelyn swallowed hard. This man was about to die for her, and she didn't even know his name. "Please," she whispered, "don't do this. Don't die for me." He looked back at her, just briefly, and she saw something hollow inside him. A grief so deep it had eaten him alive long ago. "Ma'am," he murmured, "I've been waiting a long time for something worth dying for." Her breath caught. This wasn't a rescue. It was a broken man searching for purpose or an ending. "What's your name?" she asked. He turned back to the crowd, jaw tight. "Walker Brandt." A murmur swept through the onlookers like wildfire through dry grass. Someone whispered, "Lord Almighty, Is it the Brant from Dakota Territory? He killed 9 men in one night. He left the sheriff's office burned to ashes. Even Mayor Pike faltered. Walker Brant, a name spoken in saloons with fear or fascination, never indifference. Pike tried to recover his bravado. I don't care who you are. This is our town's law. Walker's hand lowered toward his gun. Then let's finish this. The world held its breath. But before a single weapon cleared leather, a voice cried out, "Stop!" Dr. Edwin Markham stumbled forward, pale, trembling, eyes filled with guilt and fear. "She didn't kill them," he shouted. "Evelyn is innocent." The crowd went still. Mayor Pike blinked in confusion. "What nonsense!" Dr. Markham held up a shaking bottle. "I killed them," he choked out. "All 3. By accident." Gasps rippled across the square. Walker slowly eased his hand away from his gun. Evelyn stood frozen, hardly able to breathe. The doctor continued, voice breaking. I've been taking laudanum for my back. The fall from my horse, it left me in constant pain. I kept increasing my doses, and I mismeasured theirs." Evelyn's heart pounded. Markham's voice cracked as he confessed. "Marcus's heart couldn't handle the medicine I gave him. Lucien's baby. I gave her too much morphia. And Billy Shore. I shouldn't have treated a man drunk enough to fall into a well. I gave him something that slowed his breathing. He never woke." Silence. "Then, you coward," Walker said softly. "You were ready to let her die for your mistake." The doctor's face crumpled. I know. Someone behind Evelyn cut her ropes. She staggered forward, rubbing her wrists, heart pounding at the sudden freedom. Mayor Pike sputtered, desperate to regain control. Well then, Dr. Markham will be held accountable. Miss Mercer, you have our spare me, Evelyn said quietly. You don't apologize because you're sorry. You apologize because you're embarrassed. Walker watched her with something almost like respect, but he leaned in, voice low enough only she could hear. You need to leave this town tonight. Fear doesn't vanish. It changes shape. These people will blame you again. Before she could answer, the sound of pounding hooves echoed from the edge of the square. A deputy marshal rode in hot, dust spraying off his boots. He pointed straight at Walker Brant. Walker Brant, you're under arrest for the murder of Judge Alton Reeves. The square erupted into chaos, and Evelyn Mercer realized the man who had just saved her life might be living on borrowed time. The deputy marshal dismounted with purpose, boots thudding hard against the packed dirt of the square. Sunlight flashed across the badge on his vest as he walked forward, one hand resting near his holster, the other gripping a folded stack of papers. Walker Brant, the marshal repeated, louder this time. You're under arrest for the murder of Judge Alton Reeves of Colorado Territory. The crowd scattered back, hungry for drama, but terrified of being caught in the crossfire. Mothers grabbed children. Men ducked behind horses. Even Mayor Pike edged away from the center of danger. Walker didn't flinch, didn't reach for his gun, didn't move at all. He just breathed once, slow and heavy, like a man accepting the weight of something he'd been carrying for far too long. Marshal, Walker said quietly, didn't expect you this. Soon, Deputy Marshal Crawford stopped several paces away. His hand hovered near his revolver, but he hadn't drawn yet. His stance wasn't hostile, only wary. You've been running a long time, Brant. Walker nodded. 7 months. Evelyn stood beside him now, though she didn't remember deciding to move. She couldn't let this man, this broken, weary stranger who'd risked everything for her, face whatever was coming alone. What's this about? She asked, voice steady but low. Crawford looked at her, surprised she dared speak. Judge Reeves was shot in his chambers. 3 bullets. Witnesses saw this man leaving moments before the judge was found dead. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The tension shifted like a knife, turning in a wound. Evelyn looked at Walker, but he didn't look away from the marshal. I was there that night, Walker admitted. Walked out around 10. Judge Reeves was alive when I left. Crawford unfolded the papers in his hand. The judge had just overturned a conviction. A man named Samuel Garrett, wrongly imprisoned for 5 years for a murder he didn't commit. Walker's jaw tightened. Just barely, but Evelyn saw it. Heard that name before. Crawford asked. Walker didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a wounded lifetime. Samuel Garrett was my younger brother. The crowd went still. My brother was locked away for 5 years, Walker continued, the words slow and steady, like stones being lifted one at a time from a grave. While he sat in a cell, his wife died from illness because she couldn't afford a doctor. And his daughter, little Sarah, worked in a factory until a machine crushed her hand. Evelyn's breath caught. She saw the pain etched deep in Walker's face. Saw the truth of it. My brother drank himself to death from the guilt, Walker whispered. Judge Reeves signed the paperwork that stole his life, then shrugged and said the system made a mistake. Crawford swallowed hard. The papers trembled slightly in his hand. So you wanted revenge. Walker looked down at the dust beneath his boots. I wanted it more than I wanted to breathe. But I didn't kill him. Crawford hesitated. Evelyn stepped forward. If he says he didn't do it, he didn't. The marshal studied her, really studied her. The rope burns on her wrists, the torn dress, the mark where the noose had nearly touched her skin. Then he looked at Walker again. With a long exhale, Crawford folded the papers and put them away. That's why I'm here, he said finally. We found the real killer 3 days ago. Gasps erupted again. Walker's head snapped upward. A clerk in Reeves's office, Crawford explained. The judge caught him stealing from estates. The clerk shot him, staged the scene, and rode out before dawn. You were just the convenient man to blame. The crowd murmured in shock. Evelyn saw Walker freeze, completely, utterly still as if turned to stone. Freedom, when it came, didn't bring relief. It brought emptiness. Crawford continued gently. You're a free man, Walker Brandt. The words drifted through the square like smoke, slow, unbelievable, almost unreal. Walker whispered, free, not joyful, not grateful, just lost. What am I supposed to do with that now? His voice cracked slightly, enough that Evelyn felt the sound in her chest. Most men celebrate, Crawford said. Walker shook his head. Most men didn't lose everything while waiting on justice to work. Evelyn stepped closer, almost without thinking. Justice didn't save me today, she said softly. You did. Walker swallowed hard, looking away as if afraid his expression might break open. Mayor Pike cleared his throat, eager to reclaim attention. Well then, Mr. Brandt, now that your name is cleared, we would be honored to have a man like you stay in Elkhorn Crossing. In fact, no, Walker didn't turn, didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. I've seen what your town does to innocent folk. Pike flushed, but couldn't argue. The marshal turned toward his horse. Walker, for what it's worth, your brother would be proud of you. Walker didn't answer. Crawford mounted up and rode out slowly, leaving dust swirling behind him. As the crowd dispersed, whispers followed them like shadows. Some folks still eyed Evelyn with suspicion. Others shot envious looks at Walker, like they wished a legend had saved them instead. Soon, the square emptied until it was only Evelyn and Walker, two damaged souls standing where both of them had nearly died. Evelyn brushed dust from her sleeve. You were right, she said. I can't stay here. Walker nodded once. Where will you go? I don't know. Anywhere but here. He wiped his hands on his coat, almost nervous. Then I'll take you. She blinked. Why? He looked away from her, toward the long road leading out of town. Because you deserve a chance at life. And he hesitated. I need something to walk toward, Evelyn. Something worth trying for. The admission hit her harder than any stone thrown earlier. I'll pack my things, she said quietly. I'll get you a horse, he replied. They parted in silence, but something had changed, subtle, deep, impossible to name. Evelyn gathered her belongings from her small cabin. Herbs, books, the mortar and pestle she'd used to heal more ungrateful people than she could count. She touched the doorway one last time, saying goodbye not to a place, but to a chapter of her life. When she stepped outside, Walker Brandt was there with 2 horses saddled and ready. You sure about this? He asked. For the first time in a long while, she said, I am. They rode out of Elkhorn, crossing together with nothing but open land ahead and the faint hope that redemption might live somewhere beyond the horizon. Behind them, Lamplight flickered in windows, where folks were already rewriting the story to suit themselves. But Evelyn Mercer and Walker Brandt knew the truth. And the truth was enough to bind two broken lives on the long road to somewhere new. Dawn rose slow and soft over the prairie, spreading pale gold across the hills as Evelyn and Walker rode north. The air carried the cool bite of early morning, and their horses moved at an easy pace, hooves thudding gently over dry earth. Evelyn glanced at Walker from the corner of her eye. He rode with quiet purpose, shoulders straight, gaze fixed ahead. But every now and then, when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression slipped into something raw, old grief still clinging to him like dust from a long road. She understood that feeling too well. They traveled in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. Birds called from hidden branches. A breeze rustled through tall grass, brushing against their boots. The world felt bigger out here, kinder than the square where she nearly died. Finally, Walker spoke. "There's a place called Haven Creek," he said. "About 3 days' ride. Folks say it's growing faster than a spring flood." "What kind of place?" Evelyn asked. "Families, farmers, merchants. Good land. Hard land. But they're building something there. Something decent." "Decent sounds nice," she murmured. Walker nodded, though his jaw tightened like he was holding something back. They rode another mile before Evelyn asked the question she'd been holding since the night before. "Walker, what were you doing riding into a town like Elkhorn Crossing? You could have kept going. You didn't know me." He didn't answer at first. Then he slowed his horse and looked at her with eyes that held storms. "I saw a crowd gathering," he said quietly. "Saw a woman tied to a post. Saw fear, but also strength." Evelyn swallowed. "You thought I looked strong?" No, his voice dropped low. "I thought you looked alone." Those words hit her harder than any insult from the townsfolk. Alone, yes. She had been alone her whole life, learning from a grandmother the town feared, living on the edge, healing people who whispered behind her back. "Alone's a dangerous thing," Walker added. "I've been too familiar with it myself." Evelyn looked down at her reins, then back up. "You're not alone now." Walker's throat worked once tight. "Neither are you." They rode on. By noon, they reached a stretch of open meadow dotted with young pines. The grass rippled in waves, almost hypnotic. Walker motioned toward a patch of shade near a cluster of rocks. "Let's stop here." They dismounted, letting the horses drink from a narrow stream. Evelyn knelt to cup water in her hands. The cold shocked her skin, clearing the fog from her mind. Walker leaned against a rock, arms folded. He watched her in quiet thought. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked suddenly. "For me." Evelyn sat back on her heels. "I didn't think I'd have a next. Not after yesterday." Walker nodded, jaw clenched. "Yeah, I know that feeling." "You do." "I went to Judge Reeves's office that night," he said, voice soft but sharp as a blade's edge. "I wanted justice. Or revenge. Didn't know the difference anymore." "What stopped you?" Walker looked out across the meadow, eyes distant. Saw a picture on the judge's desk. His daughter, little thing with red ribbons in her hair. And I thought, if I kill him, I become the man I hated. The man who broke my brother's life. Evelyn felt a deep ache settle in her chest. "You walked away because you didn't want to hurt an innocent girl." Walker shrugged one shoulder. "Figured I didn't have the right to destroy someone else's family. Not after mine was already gone." "You did the right thing," she said softly. "Doesn't feel like it." "It will," Evelyn whispered. He turned toward her then, really looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them. Not romance, something deeper. Recognition. Two people who'd been thrown to the wolves and survived anyway. After a quiet lunch of dry bread and jerky, they rode on, following a narrow trail carved between rolling hills. Late afternoon, sun warmed their backs. Near sunset, Walker slowed suddenly. "Riders," he said. Evelyn's pulse jumped. She followed his gaze and saw 3 figures crest a distant ridge. Their silhouettes sat tall in the fading light. "Bandits?" she asked. "Could be," Walker murmured. "Or could be someone from Elkhorn Crossing who didn't take kindly to us leaving together." Evelyn's stomach twisted. They kept riding, steady but alert. The riders behind them didn't gain much ground, but they didn't fall behind either. "They're tracking us," Walker said. "No doubt." Evelyn felt fear rise, but she swallowed it. "What do we do?" "We keep moving until dark. Then we shake them." Walker sped up, and she matched his pace. The land around them shifted from open prairie to rocky foothills. Shadows stretched long across the dirt. By nightfall, they reached a small canyon cut into the hillside. Walker pulled his horse into the narrow gap between two stone walls. "This'll do." They led the horses inside. The canyon offered shelter, a hidden hollow carved by years of rain and wind. But it also meant they were cornered if the riders found them. Evelyn built a small fire, just enough to warm their hands. Walker checked his guns, movements slow and practiced. She watched the way he handled them, not with eagerness, but with resignation. "You think they'll come tonight?" she asked quietly. Walker stared into the fire. "I think trouble's been following me my whole life. Seems stubborn about stopping now." Evelyn touched his arm. "If they come, we face them together." Walker's gaze lifted to hers. There was something new there, something tired but grateful. "You sure about that?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I owe you my life." Walker shook his head. "No, you don't owe me anything, but I won't let anyone touch you." A soft wind rustled through the canyon, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. The fire crackled. Somewhere far off, a horse neighed. Walker reached for his hat and settled beside her. "Get some rest," he said. "I'll keep first watch." Evelyn nodded, but sleep came slow. Her mind churned with images of ropes, torches, and the man who'd stood alone between her and death. Outside the canyon, somewhere in the darkness, 3 riders circled like wolves closing in on prey. And Walker Brandt, free man or not, knew tomorrow might demand another fight he didn't ask for. But tonight, at least, neither of them faced the darkness alone. Night settled deep over the canyon. Stars hung bright above them, sharp as scattered glass against the velvet dark. Evelyn lay inside her bedroll, eyes half open, listening to the soft crackle of the fire and the quiet shift of Walker's boots as he kept watch. He stood near the canyon mouth, a dark shape silhouetted against the faint glow of moonlight. One hand rested on a rock. The other hovered close to his gun. He hadn't relaxed once. After a long while, Evelyn pushed herself up on an elbow. "You should rest," she whispered. "I can take a turn." Walker didn't look back. "I've had colder nights. Go back to sleep." She got to her feet anyway, crossing the small clearing to stand beside him. The night air smelled of dust and juniper. Somewhere far off, a lonely coyote called into the dark. "You think they're out there still?" she asked. "I know they are," Walker said. "Men following strangers across open land at dusk don't change their minds after dark." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "What do they want?" Walker's jaw ticked. "Could be bounty hunters. Could be gunmen hired by folks who didn't want me walking away free." Or, his gaze flicked toward her, "could be people who don't like that you left town alive." Evelyn shivered despite the warm night. "I didn't think hatred chased people this far." "It does," he said softly. "Fear's a long-legged thing. Runs farther than truth ever will." They stood in silence for a time, listening to the distant wind calling down the canyon walls. Finally, Walker said, "Get your blanket. We move before dawn." "Move? Where?" "Higher ground. They'll check this canyon at first light. We need the ridge before they catch up." Evelyn nodded, trusting him without question. She gathered her things while Walker stamped out the fire until nothing but smoke remained. His movements were quiet, efficient, the habits of a man who'd lived too long on the edge of danger. By the time the eastern sky paled with the faintest silver, they were mounted and climbing the steep path that wound between stony ledges. The horses' hooves scraped against rock, echoing softly through the cold morning air. Evelyn pulled her shawl tighter. "How far to Haven Creek?" 2 days, Walker said. "If we push the horses, we can make it faster. And if the riders don't stop?" Walker didn't hesitate. "Then we face them." The simplicity of his answer steadied her more than any comfort could have. They reached the ridge as the first rays of sun spilled across the world, lighting the valley in gold. From up here, the land stretched wild and endless, fields, hills, and distant tree lines glowing like embers waking to life. But beauty wasn't what Walker searched for. He scanned the valley floor below, eyes narrowing. There, he said. Evelyn followed his gaze and saw 3 dark shapes against the pale dawn. Riders, moving slow but steady. Tracking them. A chill crawled over her skin. Can they reach us? She asked. Not from down there, but they'll find the trail we took. We can hide it, she offered. Walker shook his head. Not for men who know what they're doing. The sun rose higher, warming their faces. Walker pointed toward a cluster of cottonwoods near the bend of a shallow river. We ride. There, he said. Rest the horses. Then we decide our next move. They descended the ridge, reaching the cottonwoods by late morning. The river shimmered in the sunlight, clear and cool. Evelyn filled her canteen while Walker crouched by the bank, studying tracks. Fresh, he muttered. 4 horses. Maybe 5. Not the same riders? No, these tracks are newer. Evelyn's heart thudded. More people after us. Walker stood slowly. More people after something. He led his horse back under the shade, eyes still watching the water. Tell me the truth, Evelyn said quietly. Is someone still hunting you? Walker hesitated. That depends, he said, on how much the world hates a man who lived long enough to see justice come too late. Evelyn stepped closer. Walker, you saved my life. I need to know if you're in danger now because of me. You're not my danger, he said gently. You're my reason to keep moving. Her breath caught. What does that mean? He looked down at the river instead of her face. For a long time, I expected death to find me. Wanted it even. But yesterday, standing between you and that rope, I remembered something. What? That dying doesn't take courage, he said. Living does. Evelyn's chest tightened with a slow, aching warmth. She reached out and touched his arm. His muscles tensed under her hand, then softened. Before she could speak, a sharp sound snapped through the air. A twig, broken. Walker's hand flew to his gun. He grabbed Evelyn's wrist and pulled her behind him, stepping toward the tree line with silent, deadly purpose. His eyes scanned every shadow. Then movement. A rider emerged from between the trees, hands raised high to show he carried no weapon in reach. A young man, barely 20, breathless and pale. Don't shoot, he gasped. Please. Walker didn't lower his gun. State your business. It's my pa, the young man said, voice shaking. George Hamlin. He was wounded by bandits last night. We don't have a doctor. I followed your trail because I heard you're traveling with a healer. Evelyn stepped out from behind Walker. Where is he? 2 miles south, the boy said desperately. He's bleeding bad. Walker didn't take his eyes off the boy. Who told you about us? The men at the old station, he said. They said a woman and a gunfighter rode by. Said you might help. Walker's jaw clenched. So folks are watching. Walker, Evelyn whispered. We need to help him. His eyes flicked between her and the trembling young rider. You sure? He asked. Yes, she said firmly. If his father's dying, we can't ride away. Walker holstered his gun. Fine. 2 miles south. Let us. Relief washed over the young man's face. He turned his horse sharply and rode back the way he'd come. Evelyn mounted her mare. Walker swung onto his stallion and leaned closer to her. We help this man, he said softly. But keep your eyes open. This could be a trap. Evelyn nodded. I trust you. Walker looked away, emotion flickering behind his guarded expression. Then stay close, he murmured. I intend to keep you alive. They rode together toward whatever waited in the trees ahead, whether mercy, ambush, or a danger neither had seen coming yet. One thing was certain. Their past had followed them into the wild, and neither of them could outrun the truth forever. Dusk stretched long over Haven Creek, painting the rooftops in fading gold and soft violet. Lanterns flickered to life one by one, small warm circles in the cooling air. Evelyn tied back her sleeves as she swept her clinic floor. It was a simple room, small enough that a single sigh could fill it, yet somehow it had become hers. A place where she could help without fear of torches, rope, or ignorant judgment. Outside, Walker paced the boardwalk with the easy rhythm of a man who'd learned to read danger in silence. His boots struck the planks in a steady beat. Night watch began soon, but it wasn't outlaws or drunken ranch hands that kept him restless. It was the folded paper in his pocket, and the fact that someone, somewhere, still wanted him brought in. When Evelyn stepped outside, the air felt heavy with the kind of questions that didn't need words. Walker stopped and leaned on the post, watching her as if she were the only still thing in a world made of wind. "You read it again?" she asked gently. "Nothing new on it," Walker said. "Just the same message written with darker ink." Evelyn walked beside him toward the creek. Fireflies began to blink in the tall grass. The soft murmur of the water carried a strange comfort. "Who sent it?" she asked. "A man named Porter," Walker answered. "Works with the marshals sometimes. Says a few bounty hunters are still passing through nearby towns. Says not all of them believe I was cleared. Some of them don't care either way." Evelyn took this in with a slow breath. "Then we prepare." He looked at her, surprised by her calm. "You're not scared?" he asked. "Of the men?" She shook her head. "No, of losing this." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "Yes." Walker's jaw tightened with something that wasn't fear, more like longing paired with the terror of wanting too much. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "if anything ever happens—" She stopped him with a raised hand. "Don't." Her voice was firm, but soft as cotton washed 100 times. "If we live in fear of shadows, the shadows win." He exhaled, shoulders dropping a little. A horse whinnied down the road, breaking their moment. Walker's posture changed instantly, alert, attentive. He scanned the dim path where the pine trees leaned over like listening giants. Footsteps approached. Familiar ones. The town doctor stepped into the lantern glow, wiping his hands on a cloth. "George is asking for you," he said to Evelyn. "Says he wants to give you something." Evelyn nodded and hurried to the clinic. Walker followed, slower, more thoughtful. Inside, George lay propped up on pillows, thinner but alive. His eyes swung open at the sound of Evelyn's boots. "Knew I'd see you again," he rasped. "Woman like you don't fade easy." Evelyn smiled as she checked his bandages. "You shouldn't talk much." "Then listen." George lifted a trembling hand and pointed at a small leather pouch on the table. "My grandmother's. She carried herbs, charms, things most folks don't understand." Walker stepped inside, just as Evelyn picked up the pouch. Its weight felt old and important, like history stitched in a hide. George continued, his voice barely a breath. "Trouble's coming, Miss Hart. Not from your past. From his." He jerked his chin toward Walker. Walker froze. "How do you know that?" George chuckled weakly. "Boy, I travel with men who run from things. You got the look. The sky behind you ain't closed yet." The room went still. Evelyn tied the pouch to her belt. George's eyes softened. "For protection," he whispered. "For what's coming?" He drifted into sleep, breath leveling. Evelyn stepped away, heart thumping, and Walker followed her outside into the night. They walked toward the hitching post where the lantern burned low. "You believe him?" Walker asked. "About what?" "That trouble's coming." She studied his face in the half-light. The lines carved by grief, the shadows etched by years of running, the slow rebuilding of a man who'd once stopped caring if he lived. "I believe you're worth fighting for," she said simply. Walker swallowed hard. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he reached out, fingers brushing hers. A hesitant touch, a question disguised as contact. Evelyn didn't pull away. The night wind stirred the creek. Somewhere a dog barked. A woman laughed faintly from a nearby house. Haven Creek wrapped itself in the kind of quiet that only small towns know. Walker finally spoke. "I want to stay," he said. "I want a life here. With you if you'll have me." Her breath caught, not in surprise, but in something deeper. "I will." It was the easiest answer she'd ever given. He closed his eyes, relief softening the hard lines in his face. "But if men come for me, we face them," she said. Together. Across the street, a lantern flickered in the sheriff's office. A sign of peace. A sign of duty. Walker looked at it, then at her. "You think we can really do this?" he asked. Evelyn nodded. "We already are. And for the first time in years, Walker let himself believe her. Morning found them on the porch of the clinic, watching the sun rise over the valley. People waved as they passed, neighbors now, not strangers. A place that wasn't haunted by the past, only built toward the future. Walker slipped his hand around hers. She didn't pull away. The road behind him was long, full of ghosts, but the road ahead was wider, brighter, waiting. Somewhere beyond the hills, hunters might still ride. Somewhere in the world, shadows might still whisper his name. But Haven Creek was no longer just a stop. It was home, and in that fragile, stubborn little town, two souls who'd been nearly destroyed by fear found something stronger to stand on. Hope, and each other.